For over 12,000 cycles, the Korrith Dominion stood unchallenged, its banners unfurled across half the known galaxy. Their doctrine was simple: no resistance lasts, no enemy survives, no exception exists. In every conflict, they overwhelmed by numbers, crushed with force, subjugated with psychological domination. To most of the galaxy, submission was wisdom. The few who chose defiance vanished. No species had ever recovered after making themselves known to the Dominion. So when a report came in, a lone planet on the fringe of the Tala's arm, with a small human colony, it didn't raise alarms. Humanity had withdrawn from galactic affairs centuries ago, considered backward, reclusive, irrelevant. The Empire's census didn't even list Earth among active diplomatic entities. The colony, referred to as the Los Nine, was believed to be agrarian. No defensive satellites, no military-grade installations, not even trade ports. It was the perfect target. A minor conquest, a brief operation, good for morale. High Marshal Razkar submitted a proposal, a broadcasted campaign, showing the glory of the Dominion swallowing yet another system. A calculated PR strike. The initial scouts sent atmospheric scans and visual feeds. One structure stood out, a solitary farmhouse at the edge of a cornfield. A human male, late 50s and apparent age, lived alone. No family, no known contacts. He was classified as non-military, high-risk agnostic. Standard threat level, 0. Razkar chose him as a ceremonial capture. The broadcast began. Dropships launched, elite Black Talon troops deployed. They landed precisely where the human's dwelling stood. The footage showed him calmly planting something in the soil. He looked up, nodded once, and continued working. No fear, no reaction. The soldiers approached. The comms officer made the formal declaration of planetary annexation. The human asked if they were selling something. That part was edited out of the stream. When they tried to restrain him, one soldier died. No weapon was drawn. His neck simply twisted in a direction it shouldn't have. The others opened fire. The footage cut. Static. The feed went dark. Razkar assumed equipment failure. A second squad was deployed. This one included atmospheric drones, sensor crawlers, and a psych commander. Contact was lost again, this time mid-transmission. One last phrase echoed over the intercom before it died. He is not a farmer. Orbital Command began to worry. Data irregularities mounted. Environmental sensors failed to report from the region. Drones scrambled in every direction, showed no life signs. No human body, no Dominion squads. Just empty fields. Corn, swaying gently in the wind. Motion analysis detected no thermal signatures. Those shadows moved in impossible directions. A squad of cybernetic enforcers was prepared, this time accompanied by a full planetary suppression ship in low orbit. But before they could deploy, the suppression ship's reactor overloaded. It detonated silently. The ship didn't explode in fire. It simply ceased. A hole was punched through reality itself, and everything in a 400-meter radius no longer existed. There was no debris, just absence. High Marshal Razkar shut down all external transmissions and issued a quiet internal blackout. He ordered a full retreat from the Los Nine. 10 ships went in. One made it out. Its pilot was comatose. Medical scans showed his brain had been overwritten by unfamiliar patterns, like someone had written messages in synaptic tissue. Only one phrase could be deciphered from the noise: "You trespassed in his garden." The Dominion's High Command reviewed all footage. They found nothing beyond visual disturbances, sensor anomalies, and dead silence. No sign of a human. No record of his retaliation. Just absence where forces had once stood. Attempts to identify the man failed. Earth's official databanks, though encrypted, confirmed the colony existed, but refused to provide civilian data. When pressed, Earth transmitted a single, brief message: "You woke him. You bury yourselves." That was the last official transmission from Earth for the next 3 cycles. Dominion propaganda attempted damage control. They claimed the attack was successful but classified due to contamination events. Internal communications told a different story. 37 ships went dark over a single planet. The few returning vessels had missing crew, burned-out navigational systems, and AI systems corrupted with cascading logic loops. The words Baba Yaga appeared in error logs, even though that phrase had no linguistic origin in any known Korrith database. Linguists traced it back to Terran myth, an ancient human folklore figure associated with death, vengeance, and inevitability. A boogeyman. Not real. But then the stories began surfacing. Not just from humans. Zentari trade guilds recalled a figure who appeared during the Dust Wars. One who dismantled warships barehanded. A single man. Pale face, gaunt features, silent eyes. Never aged. Never spoke. Entire star systems had been pacified after his appearance. Zorak historians cited the annihilation of their Civil War leaders overnight, allegedly carried out by a human that none could touch, who moved through locked fortresses without opening doors. The legends never use his name. Only he, or sometimes the Ghost in Black. The Galactic Concord had, long ago, a private file on this entity, redacted beyond AI decryption. The only sentence visible read, "Do not initiate contact under any circumstances." High Marshal Razkar dismissed the rumors. The Dominion had faced worse. They prepared a retaliatory campaign. Full siege, orbital bombardment, ground purification. No prisoners. No hesitation. The Los, 9 would be reduced to cinders and a human erased. The fleet arrived in formation. 74 warships, 20 planet killers, and a triad of void callers. 100,000 troops prepared for deployment. As they neared the Los 9's orbit, everything went silent. No radar. No comms. Just black. Ships collided with each other despite distance sensors. Drones ejected themselves into stars. Weapons failed to initialize. Crew began reporting hallucinations, hearing footsteps behind them, even in vacuum, seeing movement in sealed rooms. Across 12 decks of the dreadnought Righteous Ascendancy, the same message appeared on every wall, in dripping black script. Leave. Some tried. Most didn't make it far. One ship emerged from the chaos, engines half dead, crew sobbing, AI shredded. Its captain, still conscious, sent one final message to Dominion before his vessel imploded. "You brought war to a man who buried war long ago. He has not forgotten." Within 24 hours, half the fleet was gone. What little data was recovered showed a form, singular, humanoid, walking across hulls, unsuited, eyes glowing faintly. No boarding pods, no teleportation, just a presence that flickered from ship to ship, corridor to corridor. Security footage distorted as it drew near. Weapons turned to dust. Soldiers screamed in unison and dropped dead with no wounds. One sensor showed him pause over a dying Korrith commander, whisper something unintelligible. The officer died instantly. No marks. Brain hemorrhage without pressure. The Dominion's War Council convened for emergency analysis. Every species they had conquered was queried. Most refused to speak. The few who responded sent the same phrase. "He walks again." The Korrith Dominion had never experienced fear on an institutional level. The collapse of the Delos 9 expedition fractured something fundamental. Meetings behind closed doors replaced broadcasted declarations. For the first time in memory, there were no victory parades. Military recruitment declined. Planetary governors reported growing unrest. Propaganda was failing. The absence of clear answers fed the panic more than any defeat ever could. And still, Earth said nothing. Attempts to reestablish contact were met with void. The encrypted relays once maintained by the now-defunct Interstellar Treaty Corps on Earth returned only static. A last-ditch diplomatic envoy, dispatched without military escort, was lost within Sol's gravity well. The few automated systems in the solar system came online briefly, then died with the same signature that had consumed the Delos fleet. Quantum pulses recorded a phrase embedded in the noise. "He is not ours to control." Dominion internal security began rooting out what they called contagion speech. Whispered phrases. Childlike rhymes in military academies. Soldiers waking up screaming after dreaming of footsteps on metal grates. The term Baba Yaga was now classified as a mimetic hazard. Exposure carried a mental decay risk. 3 high-ranking officers self-terminated within days of brief exposure to intercepted messages. Each one left behind fragmented final reports that described being watched by something they could not see, even alone in their sealed rooms. The Dominion Psychoanalytic Division compiled hundreds of testimonies from lower-level personnel. Most had never been near the Los 9. The common element was hallucinations involving fields, crows, and a solitary figure. One technician, before vanishing, carved the following into her own console: "He tends the graves." Historians were pulled from deep archives. Data on pre-withdrawal humanity had long been deemed unnecessary. Suddenly, it became critical. Across multiple species, across thousands of years, reports began to surface. Sightings of a human who did not belong to any army, who showed up on battlefields and made war irrelevant. Most reports were dismissed as unverified myth. The Dominion now reviewed each one with forensic scrutiny. Patterns emerged. Conflicts that had no logical end. Civil wars that ceased without explanation. Species-wide rebellions crushed by unknown actors. Always in the shadows of such events was a recurring figure. Pale, silent, alone. Zen 3 records described a white shadow who walked through their war tunnels and left nothing behind but folded flags and bloodless corpses. The Genvi remembered the mournful one who carried no weapons and yet shattered fleets. The Zarn had no name for him, only a concept, unmaker. What troubled analysts most was a discrepancy in dates. These reports spanned centuries. The description never changed. Human biology should not permit such longevity. A forbidden archive was opened, one that predates even the Dominion. The precursor vaults had a single Terran entry that referenced Project Oblivion. The file was fractured, corrupted by time and ancient encryption layers that should no longer exist. What little remained was chilling. There was no mention of army, nation, or allegiance. Only a list of names that disappeared from every galactic registry the year after the Terran withdrawal. The final note was brief: containment unnecessary. Entity in hibernation. Do not disturb. Location: Earth-adjacent rural zone. Uninhabited at the time. The Dominion had disturbed him. Earth, meanwhile, maintained perfect silence. No diplomatic retaliation. No visible escalation. But the consequences continued. Dominion supply lines began to falter. Communication satellites failed in clusters. Orbital infrastructure around core systems degraded without signs of sabotage. Engineers sent to investigate went missing. Civilian populations began to speak of cursed ships, empty fields on urban planets, and gardens appearing in wastelands overnight. Plants that didn't match any galactic flora. Crows that had never been recorded outside Terran biospheres. The Korrith began to panic. The Empire's upper military echelon convened an emergency conclave, attended by over 1,000 top strategists, technologists, and biological analysts. All data was laid bare. No answers emerged, just a list of symptoms. Ghost fleets, psychological collapse, weapons failing silently, officers deserting high command, command nodes erased from existence. One admiral summarized it best: "This is not war. This is judgment." The Dominion could not allow its legacy to dissolve through superstition. A retaliation plan was authorized. Not a show of force this time, but an extermination protocol. Full spectrum saturation of the Los 9 and its surrounding sectors. The deployment included planetary deconstructors, entropy bombs, and psychic disruption fields. It was meant to not just kill the human, but erase the landscape that bore him. The deployment never reached its destination. One by one, the ships vanished en route. Not destroyed, not attacked, just removed. Space itself had been altered. Where the coordinates should have allowed passage, physics no longer cooperated. Trajectories folded in on themselves. One ship reappeared 3,000 light-years away, with its crew aged beyond recognition. All dead. Chronometric logs were corrupted. Its logs played one message in a loop before the ship collapsed into atomic dust. Return to your cradle. He does not want you to die in fear. The Dominion was paralyzed. For the first time, leadership questioned if victory was possible. Some demanded negotiation. Others proposed exterminating Earth entirely from orbit. One faction believed he was no longer human, but an autonomous weapon, a remnant of Terran biowarfare capabilities, unleashed when a certain condition was met. If that was true, Earth was potentially in possession of more than one such entity. That was unthinkable. So they sought help. A desperate appeal was made to the Interstellar Concord, a political assembly once powerless beneath the Dominion's boot. The Korrith swallowed pride and requested intervention. The Concord agreed to a hearing. A neutral meeting space was designated. Earth's reply was short. One will attend. At the appointed time, a small shuttle arrived. From its stepped not a diplomat, not a soldier, but an elderly Terran woman, unarmed, blind in one eye, clothed in simple fabric. She gave no name, said nothing. She walked to the center of the chamber, pulled a small black coin from her pocket, and placed it on the central table. Then she turned and walked away. The coin bore no symbols, no markings, and yet every representative present recognized it, not from direct knowledge, but from something deeper, an ancestral memory, a collective warning embedded across generations. One Concord member fainted. Another resigned on the spot. The Korrith ambassador tried to confiscate the object. His hand withered into bone before he could touch it. No vote was called. The Concord declared Delos 9 and all Terran colony systems a no-contact zone. Violation would be considered an existential threat to all civilizations. The Dominion filed a formal protest. It was ignored. The Korrith Dominion no longer ruled. Their banners, once draped across the stars, lay in ashes. Their fleets, once feared as a hammer galactic law, were now drifting tombs. Entire command networks had fallen without battle, not through resistance, not through uprising, through silence, through fear, through the knowledge that a single human still lived and had not yet decided to forget. He was not coming for conquest. He made no demands. He claimed no territory. He simply acted, and each act was a quiet unraveling of centuries of supremacy. The collapse began at the core. Korrith Prime Central Logistics AI, responsible for coordinating trade, defense, and communication, reported unusual latency in its predictive models. Then it stopped speaking. 3 seconds later, every drone in the system dropped out of the sky. Power grids overloaded. Automated factories sealed themselves shut. The capital entered a state of lockdown without orders. Emergency override keys failed. Manual overrides rejected their creators. All remaining organic officials were locked in by the very technology they had used to rule others. That night, 27 different planetary governors received the same message on their private neural interfaces. You poisoned your roots. Now your harvest rots. None of them survived the following day, not by assassination or explosion. Their biological clocks accelerated, entire lifespans compressed into minutes. Autopsies showed nothing. Their organs simply decayed simultaneously, as if aged to dust by time that didn't pass. The Baba Yaga never appeared. There was no visual, no threat, just consequence. Former Korrith allies turned silent. Merchant guilds pulled out of Dominion trade lanes. Communication relays relayed nothing but static. Entire planets were abandoned overnight. Ghost stations floated above dead worlds, scrawled with human text no one dared to translate. The crows came next. Avian creatures never native to any world outside Earth, yet appearing across Dominion space. Perched on war monuments. Feeding on nothing. Watching. At first, scientists thought it symbolic, but then the bioscanners failed to register them as alive. Their feathers were not made of organic matter. They contained dark matter traces. Their eyes reflected starlight that no longer existed. One technician attempted to trap one in a containment field. The device imploded. So did the station. The Dominion tried once more to retaliate, not with force. Those who volunteered were few, but with information. They would locate Earth's hidden black projects, uncover the origin of Baba Yaga, end the myth by exposing the truth. The expedition disappeared. When its ships were found again, they were rearranged in perfect orbit around a neutron star in the shape of a human skull. Nothing biological remained. But inside the captain's ship, etched into the hull in clawed metal, was the sentence, Truth was never yours to survive. Word spread faster than the Dominion could contain it. The galaxy watched, not with amusement or rebellion, but reverence. For the first time in living memory, power did not come from fleets, from credits, or from law. It came from a man who asked for none of it, from a human who had not demanded obedience, but had simply reminded the universe of consequence. Others began to act. The Zentari disconnected from the Dominion. The Jork Syndicate burned all contracts with Korrith names. The slave colonies once used by the Dominion for energy mining turned off their star drives and declared independence, no longer fearing reprisal. They knew the Korrith wouldn't return. The Interstellar Concord issued a formal statement. Any attempt to interfere with Earth or the Los, 9 would be considered a hostile act toward all civilizations. They did not mention Baba Yaga by name. They didn't have to. The warning was enough. One Korrith scientist, desperate to understand, reached out to Earth through an ancient analog signal, untraceable, unaffiliated, unthreatening. He did not request peace. He asked a question. Why him? Why does this one man end everything? Earth responded. A single sentence was transmitted across every spectrum. He was not made to end. He was made to outlast. Speculation turned to horror. The concept that Baba Yaga had not been designed as a weapon, but as a safeguard, shifted everything. That he wasn't Earth's fury, but its warning system. That if he had awoken, then someone had crossed a line meant never to be touched. And the line had been a garden. The Dominion had mocked the garden, had sent its soldiers into a place of peace, assumed it weakness, defiled it. And now, even their memory was being erased. Monuments once bearing their symbols cracked overnight. Their language vanished from databanks. AI refused to interpret Korrith syntax. It wasn't sabotage. It was forgetfulness, inflicted from outside. Their legacy was being deleted, not by hacking, not by force, by narrative annihilation. Reality itself had begun to forget the Korrith ever mattered. It wasn't war. It was obliteration. One final attempt was made. The last of the Dominion High Council. 5 individuals who had escaped the previous purges, gathered aboard an off-grid station, deep within the black hole's event horizon, a location known only to them. There, they planned to unleash a forbidden weapon. An entropic singularity meant to collapse entire quantum timelines. A weapon banned even by the Dominion. It failed to activate. Instead, the station doors opened. No alarms. No pressure breach. No signatures. He walked in. No suit. No weapon. Just boots covered in soil. They screamed, shot, prayed, implored. He said nothing. And then the station vanished. All that remained in its place was a patch of earth soil, drifting in vacuum, with 5 black feathers lying in the dust. The galaxy fell silent. What was left of the Dominion, now hid in fragments, pocket enclaves, rogue ships, mercenary bands. But they were hunted, not by soldiers, not by governments, but by memory. No one would trade with them. No one would house them. Their own AI rejected them. Entire databases refused to recognize them as valid species. It was as if the universe had decided they were not worth remembering. The Baba Yaga had won not through force, but by making their legacy a mistake. Then came the final broadcast. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It came through an obsolete communication channel used during the earliest days of galactic exploration. A voice. His voice. This is not vengeance. This is pruning. No one replied. The crows vanished the next day. The garden remained. Years passed. Children on distant planets learned not of Korrith, but the man in the garden, not in fear, in respect. A parable, a lesson. That peace does not mean weakness. That a man who asks to be left alone is not an invitation. That some monsters bury themselves not to sleep, but to spare the world from what would happen if they woke. Earth remained quiet. Its borders were untouched, its systems unmapped, its people unseen. But now, when diplomats met in Concord chambers, they left a chair empty, not for a representative, but for the idea of him. The Korrith were gone, not destroyed, forgotten, not mourned, erased, and in their place, the garden grew. its soil richer than before, because it had been fed by arrogance and tended by a man who did not forgive. Some say he still walks the rows each morning, checking roots, scaring crows, planting new seeds. Not because he needs to, because it is who he is.